Hello, everyone. Let's get into this. We will analyze the causes and consequences of the strikes by the United States and Israel on the country of Iran. Talks in Switzerland to prevent such actions just broke down. Who is to blame for that? I doubt anyone will find that out until the shooting stops, which could be a long time. The pretext for a war only needs to get you through the door. People usually leave it to the historians to debate about that afterwards, years later. What implications does this have, though? This is the second time in the past non-calendar year that the US launched strikes against a rival that they were engaging in diplomatic talks with. Other countries might start to worry if diplomacy is being used to catch people off guard, and if it was sincere at all. People wonder the same thing about all the foreign leaders that Putin entertained before the invasion of Ukraine. The table of Macron with Putin across during COVID comes to mind. Was Putin ever going to consider all the foreign leaders' pleas to stop the invasion? Or was the invasion always a foregone conclusion? And diplomacy simply a formality? Now, how did we get here? Since the famed October 7th attack on Israel, Hamas, to the west of Israel in the Gaza Strip, and Hezbollah, to the north, have had their Iran-provided arsenals largely destroyed. This has taken bargaining power away from Iran in any diplomacy related to the matter with Israel and the US. After recent protests against the regime in Iran have turned violent, killing many civilians, sometimes upwards of 5,000 people, some sites are saying, the US and Israel sense further weakness. What were these talks even about? These talks were about Iran's nuclear program. To sum this up, it is about Iran's sovereignty versus the trust of other nations. Iran views nuclear power as a reliable source of energy, which it is. They also view it as their inherent right as a nation to choose which type of energy fuels their economy. Other nations accuse Iran, specifically Israel, and some members of the US government accuse Iran of trying to obtain a nuclear weapon via their nuclear program. Why would they want a bomb? The main reason would be to prevent land incursions more than anything. So to invade a country, you need a large bill of forces and supplies, and those would be very vulnerable to a nuclear strike. Iran saw the fate of Iraq and Afghanistan compared to the fate of North Korea, which largely has been left alone by the United States over the past decades. Israel would say that a theocracy, which is a government ran by religious law, is the last country which should have a weapon. That argument has resonated with people across the Western world, even Canada, a country that has recently disagreed with the US on most things. Israel also claims that they would use it against them preemptively. That is where they start losing people. Most know that if Iran struck the US or Israel first with a nuclear warhead, they would risk millions of civilians in the retaliatory nuclear attacks. For those who don't know, Israel also has nuclear weapons, not just the US. We are talking geopolitics here, but there is a flair of the personal as well. Since Trump's first term, he has always claimed that the initial nuclear deal that the US made with Iran was bad for the US, and that Iran can't be trusted. In 2020, after Trump killed the most important member of the Iranian military, Iran had the last strike in that confrontation. Iran only stopped firing after they downed a civilian liner, losing the victim card in doing so. The attacks over the summer on Iran by the US can be seen as a way to score a win against a fleeting rival that Trump has always been preaching against. Now, what comes next? We have not seen a war yet where both sides have either ballistic missiles or aircraft in such large numbers. In Armenia and Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan had the clear air superiority. In Russia and Ukraine, Russia has always preferred using artillery as their fire support of choice. But missiles concerning, they have always had more missiles than Ukraine, still, even with US support. What we did learn from the 2020 strikes Iran did against US bases after the assassination of one of their top generals was that even superpowers are not safe from new weapons like missiles and high-speed drones, and that missile systems are both scarce and expensive, which is bad for everyone on the planet. What happens here right now is chaos. From a military point of view, each side must be careful not to expend their stockpile while keeping the missile launching mechanisms safe. Now, for the US, the mechanisms to launch missiles in that area are mostly naval ships and airplanes. For Iran, it's mostly ground-based missile launchers. And what's so special about the mechanisms? It doesn't matter if you have more missiles if you actually can't launch them. It's kind of like how the US has more tank shells than tanks. Same with any country that fields tanks or artillery. So a limiting factor of this conflict is the expensiveness of the missiles being involved. And it's no coincidence that artillery shells are more common in Ukraine. And if this conflict extends for weeks, turning into a war, sides might look for an out or switch to dumber bombs. Now, is there a way out other than running out of equipment? Yes. If either side could save face by scoring a successful hit of some sort, they might be willing to accept a proposed ceasefire. Though it does look bleak. If the U.S. received mass casualties from recent strikes it received on bases in the region, the U.S. might have the pretext it needs to continue the fight. Some say this is what Israel would like. Trump is asking for the Iranian people to seize this moment. We will see if that works. People often become more patriotic when an outsider attacks, especially a hated one. The U.S. strikes on water infrastructure during the Iraq invasion in the early 2000s did have the effect of turning the Iraqi populace against the U.S. Because if you don't have clean water, you might hate the person who caused that more than the regime you were just living under. And it also should be said that the Iranian people right now might be more concerned about sheltering from airstrikes. Can people in the U.S. who are against this do anything? We will see. Congress has been unable to stop most of Trump's recent domestic and foreign policy agenda. It might not be a coincidence at all that this is happening before the midterm elections. These strikes also come before a proposed war powers resolution to limit Trump's action against Iran that was supposed to happen this upcoming Monday and Tuesday. Even if Congress can manage an action, a full-on war might be going on, and they might not have a choice but to see it through. Now, how is this different than Iraq and Afghanistan? Iran is by far more populous and far better equipped than the early 2000s Taliban and the Saddam Hussein regime in Iraq. Their geography also helps them a lot, specifically their mountains. Their mountains can help protect their weapon stockpiles and their country's leadership. I know recently the Supreme Leader's compound is said to be struck, but I think it could be safely assumed that he probably wasn't there. But we will see. I could be completely wrong about that. And if Iran is committed to this, which it seems like they are, this conflict could last much longer with their geography enabling that. What are the long-term implications now? The U.S. can lose allies. Recently, as the early Biden administration, the U.S. has prioritized Israel's needs over the pleas of its allies. We had NATO support in the invasion of Afghanistan, but one should note, not this one, even if there are British planes in the air protecting their own bases. The air of invincibility for the U.S. will also shrink if it cannot protect its facilities from drones and missiles, similar to the air of invincibility that Russia lost during the invasion of Ukraine. Also, the length of this can determine not if the U.S. should intervene in a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, but can it even do so in the first place? Munitions of the U.S. were already low when the U.S. ended its air war against the Houthis in Yemen. And if this conflict turns into a war, the U.S. might have no choice but to sit out if China invades Taiwan, simply due to missile shortages. Now, elsewhere on the globe, this could also decrease Russia's supply of Iranian weapons, and this could have ripple effects in that region. Now, let's shift to China. Will this bring more people under their sphere of influence? Or will it scare them away, given the fact that Iran is a Chinese ally and it doesn't seem like China's helping them too much? At least not as much as the US has helped Ukraine against Russia, materials-wise. Lastly, I do hope for peace as soon as possible, whatever that does entail. If you would like to see more quickly made geopolitics podcasts like this, please let me know down below. Have a great day, everyone. This has been The Lifelong Learner.